Okay, once again, good evening and welcome. I'm glad that everyone is able to make it tonight. Thank you for making time for our meeting. If we have not met, my name is David Sotile. I'm the principal at Irvington Middle School, and I'm joined tonight by our eighth grade team leader, as well as seventh and eighth grade math teacher, Mr. Greg Pernick. Our goal tonight is to provide you with a number of updates on our trip itinerary for our upcoming Washington, D.C. trip, as well as some details about trip procedures and protocols, things to get ready for, and to make sure that we answer your questions so that we are kind of full speed ahead and all systems go for our coming trip. Our trip will be leaving, I think, as you know, 2 weeks from today. At this point, we will be probably just wrapping up our tour around the reflecting pool, and I'll get to that in a second. But there's a lot of excitement, and it keeps getting higher. I think Mr. Prank might mention a little bit about cardboard and scale built buildings a little later in our program tonight, just to share some of that excitement. I'm going to share my screen to get us started. But before I do that, I do want to just encourage anyone that has questions at any point in our program tonight to drop those into the Q&A that you should have access to on your screen. We may answer them right away. We may get to them as we get to a certain portion of the program, depending upon what the questions are in regard to. But we want to make sure we answer every single one of them, and we'll stay here as long as we need to make sure that you are all good to go. I'll just say again, before I get to the slides, we're super excited. This trip has just gotten better and better each year, particularly since we've been able to bring it back after the pandemic. And it's to the point now where this is our fourth trip, and we were actually having that conversation not too long ago. Like, is it 3 years? Is it 2? Because they do blend together a little bit. After you do so many of them, but it is. Each one is a special event, and definitely we're looking forward to this year's with a great group of eighth graders. So with that said, I am going to bring up our slides. All of this will be made available to you in Friday's Bulldogs Bark, so you'll have a copy of the slides. You'll have a link to this recording. So anything that you missed tonight or want to just go back over, you'll be able to do that. But as I said, our trip will leave on March 25th. We'll be traveling till the 27th, and off we go. Yes, an unforgettable visit certainly awaits. That is the U.S. Marine Corps War Memorial, also known as the Iwo Jima statue. We will be visiting that along our way. We'll travel from Irvington Middle School to the Capitol and around the Capitol on motor coaches that are equipped with DVD players, although they don't seem to get much use anymore. They do have restrooms. Importantly, they do have charging stations, and I'll talk about cell phones in a little while, and heating and air conditioning. Our tour company is Junior Tours. We've worked with them for several years now, really going back to pre-pandemic. They've been a great partner for us, and they've helped to secure not only our accommodations and our buses and our tour guides that we're working with down there, but they are a partner all the way through the trip. And so certainly a lot of the things that you see in our presentation tonight are a product of our close work with them and having the chance to work with folks who are both expert in their field and really listen very carefully to the things that we want to make sure that it all works together. An example of that would be the hotel at which we're staying now for the fourth year in a row, the Hyatt Regency in Bethesda, Maryland. It is hard to find accommodations for a trip like this where we have enough space for everybody, rooms that are clean and have what we need. There are no exterior balconies or walkways. There is a 24-hour front desk, and there is a space that is large enough for our entire group to eat breakfast together each day, which is a part of what we do. So that is a big a big undertaking to find that hotel at a price point that can provide the value that we need. And that is not so far outside of DC that we spend most of our time traveling back and forth in traffic each day. And this one has worked out very, very well for us over the last several years, and we're happy to be going back there. I think this is as good a time as any to talk about our roommate and our rooming situation. Students will be grouped into rooms. Most rooms will have 4 students. There are some just because of odd numbers that have 3. But by and large, each room is made up of 4 students. There are 2 double beds. There's, each room is then combined with another room of students for a total of 8, sometimes 7 again. To be supervised by 1 chaperone. So when we go on the trip, our groups that we'll travel with, and we'll talk more about this later on in our presentation, our groups that we travel with are in an 8-to-1 ratio, 8 students to 1 chaperone. And the way that breaks down from a rooming standpoint is that each room has 4 students in it. And the chaperone is in charge of those 2 rooms. So more to come on that. Mr. Perk, you want to talk a little bit about how we came to the rooms, and we're finalizing that right now, actually, but just our process for putting students together in rooms?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. Good evening, everybody. Just to reiterate how excited we are, and this night always marks this makes it real. I feel like this is the night where reality sets in. We are taking this trip. We talked about this in the fall. I don't want to go too much into it if you've already heard, right? The kids all filled out forms indicating who they want to be with. If their top choice matched, we guaranteed for sure that those 2 would be together, stapled those papers, and they will be in a room and thus, together the entire trip. The other 2 in the room may or may not have named each other. That was more just, however it worked out. Tried to keep it so that it, makes sense, but no guarantees. Kids who wanted to be with a specific group of 4 aren't necessarily getting that. But every child is definitely getting someone they indicated on their paper in their room. We put together literally the last puzzle piece we think today. And now I'll take the next few days to just make sure that everything is correct and lined up, because we want to reveal this stuff on Thursday afternoon at about 3:25, which is also the same day as David mentioned earlier. He mentioned the cardboard. So on Thursday, you're all invited. Hopefully you know this, to the Mar Gym at the end of the day, like around 2:35, 2:40, to take a walking tour of a scale model of DC. Your children are putting together these projects this week. We hope to finish Friday. They're painted next week in art classes and then ready for Thursday. So then shortly after the presentation, the rooms will be revealed. David, if you want to talk about it now, when we reveal these rooms, we're pretty certain we've got it right. I said this in the fall, we are in these rooms for such a short, brief amount of time, right? We check in on Wednesday night, pretty late in the evening. We wake him up pretty early Thursday for breakfast, and then we run it back Thursday night and Friday morning. So I'll let David make his regular plea on this, but just remember, we're in those rooms for a short amount of time.
Thanks, Greg. And I just want to give Greg a tremendous amount of credit. He is the one that spends the most time pouring through each student's requests, trying to make matches that work. And when he says we got it right, let me define what it means to get it right. What it means to get it right is that every student is in a room with at least 1 person that they named as someone that they'd want to be with, as well as not being in a room with someone that they specifically said, look, this person just isn't a good match for me. And they had that opportunity as well. Beyond that, we don't make promises, and that's for 2 reasons. The first reason is our trip is meant to be a combination of a chance to celebrate us nearing the end of middle school with your friends, and we want students to be together with their friends and people that they have grown to be very close with. It's also a time for us to come together as a class as we close out our time at IMS. And that is done by, hopefully building some relationships that are a little bit stronger than those that we've built thus far, spending some time in a different setting and in a unique experience. Even if students have been to DC before or been away before, this is the first time that they've ever been away overnight as part of their participation in school. And so it is likely that students will be in a room with one or more students that maybe they don't spend as much time with, they don't know as well, and this is a chance to get to know those students a little bit better. We have prepped students for all of this. This is part of our presentation when students are provided the opportunity to make the choices that Greg talked about a moment ago. And this is now the time where we have to enlist every family's help in supporting that process, because there will be a wide range of feelings when the list comes out, despite the foreknowledge of how this process works and the very clear statements that it's likely that you'll be with some folks that you don't know as well. Some students will get more than others, right? Not because we intended it that way, but because that's how those puzzle pieces fit together in a way to get every kid something that they wanted. And some students will have a choice that they made, but maybe it's not their first choice or whatever it may be. Greg said it, we don't spend a tremendous amount of time in the rooms. I know that still these rooms are very important. We know that these rooms are very important to kids because of the unique nature of staying in a hotel room, maybe for the first time, with other students. And in order for our trip to function, in order for this trip to happen and be able to come off, we need everybody to show the level of flexibility that demonstrates that they're able to, recognize that they get a choice, but they don't get all of their choices, and that it's going to be a great trip nonetheless. I can tell you that there have been times where there's some drama where someone says, "Oh, I didn't really want that person," or whatever the case would be. Once that list is released, we're not really in a position to make those changes, unless we've missed something. If a student has told us that look, I just can't be in a room with this person, they wrote that person's name down, we will honor that, and if we made a mistake, we will find a way to fix it. Outside of that, though, we really do need everyone to support this process in order to make this trip work. It doesn't work any other way. So I thank you in advance for, certainly validating and consoling your child if he or she comes home feeling less than 100% about the room that they're in, and simultaneously saying to them, it's going to be an awesome trip. You're going to love it. And trust me on this, and sticking with that with them. I can tell you in the years we've done that, I said there, from time to time, there's a disappointment or whatever it may be that gets expressed. That disappointment fades almost immediately when the wheels on the bus start turning on Wednesday morning. That we've never seen a situation where that's continued on post departure. So I need us all to take the long view on that, and I thank you again in advance for helping with that. Pardon me. Okay, so as I said, Wednesday morning, we're departing. We will meet in the MAR gym at 6:45 in the morning. And it's important to note, by the way, we will be meeting with students next week to give them a number of these details. So they'll have a little bit of this information as well, but we want to make sure that you're clear on it. 6:45 a.m. meeting time in the MAR gym on Wednesday morning, the 25th. And our buses are rolling at 7:15. So it's really important that everybody be punctual. We will do a brief inspection of each student's bag. It is not because we don't trust or think highly of our students. It is because we want to avoid any situation that's unanticipated. And when we get on the road and now all of a sudden something came on the trip that shouldn't. To be clear, what we're basically saying is that students should not bring any beverage container that is already open. So if they bring bottles of water, or if they bring soda or Gatorade or whatever their beverage of choice is, because they can certainly bring snacks, that it should be sealed and not opened prior to their arrival at school. If it's open, we're just going to leave it behind. We're not sending it to the lab or anything like that. But we're just going to avoid any potential situation that could go sideways. Similarly, we'll talk about what not to bring later in our presentation, so I won't belabor the point now, but it is a brief inspection of the bag. We're not employed by the TSA or anything like that, but we do want to make sure that everyone is set up for a safe trip that is well within the boundaries of all of our rules and guidelines. As I said, we'll leave at 7:15 in the morning, and we will stop on the way for lunch, probably at the Maryland House. This will be the only time in the trip that students will have to pay for a meal or really anything else, quite honestly, with the exception of buying any souvenirs as desired. So we do ask families to send students with some cash for the purpose, a prepaid debit card or whatever works for your family. to pay for lunch at the rest stop. Typical rest stop meal tends to run in the $12 to $15 range, depending upon what a student wants. It could be a little more or a little less. But that will be the only time during the trip where students will have to pay for something themselves. We'll be going through how they do the rest of that as we get there. The Maryland House has a wide variety of food options. It's a big place. It handles obviously travelers all day long. It's a great place for us to stop first and get everybody fed before we get into DC and get into what will be a full afternoon of touring. And so, as I said, lunch at the Maryland House. And then from there, we're going to be stopping first at the Jefferson Memorial. And I don't think it's going to be quite this view of the cherry blossoms when we get there. It will be very nice. The cherry blossoms look like they'll be starting to come out, but they will not be yet at peak bloom. The forecasts are anywhere from the weekend after we leave to sometime in the middle to late the following week. So we'll be seeing the first peaks, but not the full on effect of them in full bloom, which in all honesty might actually help us a little bit in terms of getting around the city. We'll see how that goes. Jefferson Memorial is a great spot for a photo op, and we will take advantage of that right away. And it's obviously a great place to get a view of some of the very iconic scenes in DC. You get a view straight down into the White House and so forth from there. It's a great place to start, I really think. And so we're excited to do that this year. And then from there, we're going to be going to the Capitol building. And our Capitol building tour will take place. We're scheduled for a tour between 3 and 3:20. But there is we want to make sure that we're there in plenty of time because there is a healthy security protocol to get in there. And we will be making sure that we're early. In addition to that, having had some contact for our tickets with Congressman Latimer's office, we are certainly going to be met by a staffer, and it is quite possible that the congressman himself will actually meet with our group. I'm not promising that. They obviously are always reluctant to promise that, but there seemed to be at least some optimism that we might get a chance to meet the congressman while we're there, and that would be fantastic. And then we will do the standard Capitol tour on top of that, the crypt, the rotunda, and statuary hall. Okay, and then moving on, following the Capitol tour, we will do a tour of the reflecting pool monuments. And you see there Lincoln and the Korean War Memorial and the World War II Memorial and the Vietnam War Memorial. It is the word illuminated on here is a little bit, maybe a little bit of a stretch with daylight saving time and the time that we actually have this tour scheduled. It will be illuminated by the sun when we begin. And by the time we finish, we'll begin to see the evening lights illuminating the tour, and that's actually a good way to finish because it does get busy, and it's certainly helpful for us from a safety perspective to be able to have some daylight to do much of this tour with. But it is a great way again to see some of those very famous scenes of DC right out of the gate, and it will be the final touring stop of our first day. These are stops that we will do together as a full bus. So, Greg said before that, students spend only a very little bit of time in their room, but I wanted to go one step further and say they also spend a great deal of time in either a whole group setting, which will be the case at breakfast and dinner every day, and at least one of our lunches, actually two of our lunches, and a great deal of time with their entire bus. And so this monument tour is a really good example of that, because that is how we break up the tours of spots like this. So it's important to note that students will have plenty of time together with not only the students in their room and in their group, but also their other friends that are on their bus or in the glass overall. Following our tour there, we will have a relatively late dinner at a place called Not Your Average Joe's. We have not yet been there. This is our first year. It's coming somewhat highly recommended. Our tour company recommended it to us for knowing us as they do, and the things that help us to have a a successful meal. And then we actually got a staff member who had been to one for a separate event and said it seems like it fits really well with what we need. But Greg, you want to talk a little bit about food and making sure that we're situated there?
Yeah, certainly. So I've only heard, I think, from one family thus far. It's pretty important that you reach out to us, really soon if something doesn't look right for your child, specifically, for anything, especially allergy concerns. I say, gluten stuff, vegetarian seems like I think at both dinner places we're pretty good with some non-meat options, but whatever it is. And then, even pickiness, if something doesn't look right, if you think your child is not gonna, like to eat the stuff that's offered, please reach out to me because I can, get the message to our tour company, who will then in turn get the message across to the restaurants, and we could have something ready for them. And if something is not going to work, any suggestions you can provide are helpful as well. But yeah, please get that info to me soon. But hopefully there is something for everybody. I mean, these may not look that appealing to the grown-ups on the trip, but I think kids generally are going to be pretty happy.
Yeah, it is not every place that can feed 130 people at the same time and have five-star cuisine, and be kid friendly. So we choose two out of the three. We want to be kid friendly. It's very important to us that kids eat, and we want to all eat together. And so while the five-star cuisine may have to wait until the weekend after we return, Mr. Pernick will cook up something wonderful, I'm sure. But the other two we can certainly fulfill and make sure that everyone is fed, and satisfied. So that's night one, and then following dinner, and dinner's, like I said, fairly late. We'll be getting to dinner about 7:30 or so. We're going to be heading to the hotel. And we'll check into the hotel somewhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. Certainly by the time students get into their rooms and what have you, it will be it would be surprising if it was much before 10, just because of the process that's kind of typically unfolds there. Once students get to the hotel, and I'll talk about medication in a few minutes, but any students that need to receive medication will go to get it. Other than that, students will be put into their rooms by their chaperones, and they will remain in their rooms overnight. There will not be students outside of their rooms, without a chaperone or other supervision. It's not a situation where students are going from room to room or what have you. If they need, again, quickly upon arriving, if they need to get some ice, or if there's a vending need that they have really quickly, we find a way to facilitate that. But the idea is that once we get to the hotel, students go into their rooms, and that's where they remain until we wake them up in the morning. We have full days. We will do a lot of walking, and students, well, they won't immediately be tired. They will be tired, in the long run. I mentioned medication. I just do want to say I know that Ms. Laboon, our trip nurse and former IMS nurse, is on our call tonight. So thank you, Sarah, for being here on the call. And more than anything, thank you for once again being willing to be our trip nurse. Ms. Laboon is fantastic. She is, well experienced with this trip, and certainly, knows many of our students, and is just couldn't ask for more in someone to really support our trip. So we thank Sarah for joining us. And I'll come back around to medication a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so that was day one. Day two, we will wake students up probably around 6:30 or so. And we're going to get them up and out early because we're going to first have breakfast all together at the hotel, as I said a few minutes ago. And breakfast is a full breakfast. It is, hot breakfast. Generally speaking, eggs, whether it's bacon or sausage, there's cereal, there's fruit, there's yogurt, there's a variety of muffins, different things. The idea there, like Greg said, with regard to dinner, the hope is that there's something for everybody there. And again, if there is a dietary restriction or a food allergy in particular, I can't stress how important it is that we have that information, today. So at the end of this presentation, send an email to Mr. Pernick, just sharing those details so that we can plan for it accordingly. Because we definitely want to start every student out with a full belly and a nourishing breakfast. Because there's lunch and they're going to be able to eat, but it is going to be a little bit more on the go, and so we want to start strong and finish strong with everyone together at dinner as well. Okay, so here we are, the breakfast at the hotel, and then once we're done with breakfast, we're going to be on the road, and we will not return to the hotel until it's time for bed. And off we go. First stop, as I said earlier, we will stop at the Marine Corps War Memorial. Another great stop for a photo op. We try to make sure we have at least one group photo each year, and hopefully maybe we'll have two this year. But this is right next to Arlington National Cemetery. We will be going there later in the trip, but this is a great stop to get an incredible view of DC below, and really a great spot. There was a question about will the hotel offer bottles of water for kids every night? The hotel does not offer bottles of water for kids every day. We will have water on the bus. Actually, there's two questions, and I can get them both with this. We will have water on the bus. That is primarily water that we will give to students, especially after we're getting back on the bus, after walking around. We want to make sure we have a way to keep students hydrated. And so that will certainly be there to make sure that we're not without water. That is not an endless supply of water, though, and I certainly would encourage, and this is a question that came up, I think, a bit earlier. I would certainly encourage students to bring a reusable water bottle that they can fill in different locations. A couple things about that. I mentioned earlier that we'd want our any beverages that students bring in their bags to be sealed and unopened prior to our departure. With respect to a reusable water bottle, we'll ask that they come in empty. And then obviously we have bottle filling stations in the building. You could fill them after we're all set. And also then you'd be able to fill them whether it's at the hotel or elsewhere. So, in all of those cases, that would be the preferred way to make sure that we have water for students.
Yeah, David, real quick, right? Just on top of that, while we bring water with us, we put it under the bus. Yes. And it seems like every year we're on the Tappan Zee Bridge and somebody asks if they can have some water. Right. We left 5 minutes ago.
Right.
So yeah, definitely bring some either already bottled, airtight, water bottles, or a reusable one that they fill up at the school.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, that's definitely the case. That those bottles are for once we get to DC and so forth. Students can certainly bring their own onto the bus with them. Okay. All right. Let's keep moving here. All right. So moving on through the day of day two. Day two is a big day for us. We have got a full day sketched out there. So Iwo Jima Memorial first. We'll head from there to the National Air and Space Museum right on the mall. We have timed entry to that museum, and that museum has been undergoing renovation for several years. So each year that we've gone over the last three, it's been a little bit of a different experience. And so it's been kind of cool to see how they've kind of worked through different renovations. They are nearing the end of those. I'm not sure that they're fully complete at this point, but much of the museum has been finished at this point, so it will be a great experience. It's always a big one for a great many students who are really interested in the topics of air and space, and the there's a simulator there that some students like to go and use, and it's definitely a place where there's a lot of enthusiasm. And then from there, what happens is students in their small groups have the opportunity to explore the Smithsonian in kind of on their own schedule. They can go to the Museum of American History, or they can go to the Museum of Natural History. They will go wherever they go with their chaperone, and so they'll make those decisions as a group. They actually have time to see both, depending upon how long they want to spend in each one. Somewhere in there, they'll also get lunch, and that lunch will be paid for by a cash allowance that will be provided to them that day. So each chaperone will be given money to hand to students so that they can purchase their lunch. That will be $20 for lunch that can be purchased at the Smithsonian. In some cases, though, groups will also choose to do something a little bit different than the traditional Smithsonian. They've chosen, in some cases, to walk to see the White House up close. Or we actually have this year the opportunity to get some timed passes for groups that want to do it, to the National Archives to see the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. That's a new thing for us. We haven't done that as a group. It's a little bit of a hard thing to do as a large group, but definitely something that was just kind of sent our way by the tour company recently. So it's kind of brand new on our agenda, even as a possibility. But that's a chunk of time that the groups will have, kind of between the visit to the Air and Space Museum and then our second kind of the bookend of the timed entry, and that is to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is the newest Smithsonian Museum. If you haven't been there, it is really magnificent in so many ways. And having been there now, I guess 4 years. I don't know if we were there before the pandemic, Greg. I'm not. Yes. Okay. Well, I still haven't seen it all. So definitely looking forward to a visit there again. But it is the like I said, the back end of that timed entry, and that entire day will be spent essentially, in or around the National Mall there, with the option for a multitude of Smithsonian museums. And there have been years where we've had a group of students who are particularly interested in art, and they've gone to the Portrait Gallery or the Hhhħ Museum. So those are options that are out there. They do these things, as I said, as a group. It is an exercise in students collaborating and working together to make some decisions. But it is definitely a great day, because there's a lot of kind of roaming around and feeling like you're just getting the chance to visit DC. Following the African American History Museum, where we'll all meet up, we will then go back to the Tidal Basin to see the other two Tidal Basin monuments of FDR and Martin Luther King. They are right near each other, and that will be a chance to kind of see the full round there of the Tidal Basin. And it is a magnificent view. If you haven't been there personally, or if it's been a while, it does really just kind of stop you cold every time you see it. Every year we go, it is just one of those things that just the first time you see it, it just hits you. And so we're really looking forward to spending that time there with students. And then from there, we will go to our evening activity for day 2, which includes dinner. And that is back to Bolero, and that is Mr. Pernick's specialty. He might have stepped away, so if he has, I'll start, but I'll let him jump in if he happens to get back. Oh, there he is. He's not going to miss Bolero. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't realize my video went off. So Bolero is this will be our second time there. Last year was a lot of fun, a big success. It's a little chaotic, if you ask me, just because, there's 130 kids bowling and eating, and it's just, kids are grabbing food. They did a pretty good job helping us with kids with, like I said earlier, allergies or food concerns of any kind. So I trust that they'll do it again. This one, again, from a vegetarian standpoint, looks like we've got the pizza, the vegetable platter, the tater tots. But if anything doesn't look right, please let me know. But this is a fun place. I like that. We kick back, we have a little fun. If I can bowl, I'm going to try. I'm going to try to challenge this guy right here. And that's all I have to say about Bolero. Arcade too, right? Arcade.
And there's an arcade. Students will get cards with credit on them to play arcade games. It is a night of fun. Greg's not going all the way on this. We used to do something slightly different on night 2, which I also thought was a lot of fun. But Mr. Pernick and some members of the class convinced me a couple of years ago that a night of bowling is a great way to spend our last night together in DC. It's like I said, a lot of fun, and it really does encompass everything. It's a chance for kids to relax. We pretty much will take over the entire place. I mean, I think there was only like maybe half a dozen lanes that were not occupied by our group last year. And so it is really just a chance for them to have a good time. And again, it's bowling, it's the arcade, it's plenty of food, and if neither one of those are your thing, you can just sit and kind of hang with your friends. It's definitely a fun way to spend the evening. And then we will head back to the hotel. All right, I want to check in on some questions here. Where are the chaperones sleeping, and how will the kids get in touch with the chaperones during the night? So, great question. Chaperones will be sleeping in their own rooms, separate from the students, but nearby, typically on the same floor. And there will be a method of contact established for students with their chaperones. In many cases, that may be through the use of something called the Remind app, or via cell phone. So the Remind app is an app that can be downloaded to a cell phone. It does allow for two-way communication, doesn't require the use of a student or a staff member's or parent's cell phone number specifically, but it does allow for notifications to be sent back and forth in the same way that you might send a text message if you were texting from one phone to another. That is the primary way that they'll get in touch with one another, and each chaperone will be going over that in detail with their group in terms of how to get a hold of them. And as far as the what's happening in the hotel at night, I didn't mention this before. Each of our floors will have private security that is assigned to that floor, specifically to again monitor the hallways. They will not enter student rooms if there is an issue within a student room where there's noise or a concern, or a student were to come out of their room and have a concern. Their instructions are to contact me directly. And so that's how that works. So if there's a need for a student to contact a chaperone, and for any reason they're unable to do so, then that would be the next level of support there. They would be able to contact me directly via the security that's in the hallway. Question: are the parents or students expected to tip the tour guides and bus driver? No, all tips are included with the fee that was paid for the trip. So there is no tipping necessary or expected, or it's not even a part of the process for you at this point, because you have paid the trip fee, and now all gratuities are included. And bathrooms, does a chaperone go with students for safety? And I'm not sure about the safety drinks at the restaurants. And I mean, students are seated when we go to, for instance, Average Joe's. You're going to be seated at a table. Wait staff will serve drinks to students at their tables. Similarly, at the bowling alley, students will be seated in and served in their specific location in their alley. In terms of the restroom, typically, if a chaperone is with students and they need to use the restroom, chaperone would wait outside the restroom. They're not going to go into the restroom with students, but they'll be nearby. Okay, day 3. So once again, we will have breakfast at the hotel. Notably, when we finish breakfast, we will be loading the bus. So students will actually bring their luggage down to breakfast with them, and we will be heading straight out from breakfast right onto the buses to finish our trip. And basically, day 3 involves 2 primary stops. We will start at Arlington National Cemetery and try to get there early in the morning, or as early as possible, hopefully by 9. We will see the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We'll visit the Kennedy grave sites. This time of year, Arlington National Cemetery is special no matter when you visit it. It's a breathtaking place, hollowed ground. But this time of year in the spring, when things come into bloom, is just, I think that much more profoundly beautiful. It is quite possible that while we're visiting, there might be a funeral taking place. We've seen that now several times. It's an operating cemetery, and funerals take place there almost every day, if not every day. There was actually one that we were there for a number of years back, where it seems like it was as I understood it, an Air Force general. And all of a sudden, as we're standing there at the changing of the guard, you see these 3 fighter jets come up and do the missing man formation in the sky, and you're just like blown away by this scene that you're witnessing. So it is likely that students will see something that we've never seen before, or that they've never seen before, in at Arlington and elsewhere. From Arlington, we will make our last stop at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. We will visit the permanent exhibit there. And it's a fitting end to the trip in the sense that it is certainly a topic that is very important in our study of social studies for our eighth graders. It is one that has often or that has always been a centerpiece of our trip. It's something that is of profound importance as part of this trip, and so we will finish our time there. And I'll just say, when we go to the Holocaust Museum, one of the things that happens almost without fail is our students are so impressive to us in how they treat the solemnity of the place, of the experience. We're traveling with eighth graders, and they are every head to toe eighth graders, right? Teenagers in every sense of the word. And as we walk around DC, there's a lot of laughter and a lot of fun and a lot of kind of goofiness from time to time. And you go into the Holocaust Museum, and you're waiting in line, and it's a mixed bag. And then all of a sudden, when you get there, if you haven't been there, what happens is they give you a card with a real person's story from the Holocaust, and they put you on an elevator, and they purposely kind of pack you into that elevator at pretty close quarters to simulate an experience. And you get up to the top of the elevator. There's a short video that plays, and you open it, it's just black, and there's this the last words of the video, and I couldn't believe what we saw. And then there's this black wall that says the Holocaust, and it's just silent. And students show us how special this experience is to them, and how how much it resonates with them by their behavior time in and time out as we visit this museum. So I do think it is a fitting end to our trip this year. It's been at different points in the trip over the years, and this is when we were able to get tickets for this year. And so from there, we will board our buses. We will travel out of DC. We'll have a late lunch at a rest stop, maybe the Maryland House again, depending upon what traffic looks like on the way home. Again, they'll get a cash allowance to purchase that meal at that point. And then we will head home. Our hope is to be home between 7 and 7:30. So what's included, just again, going back to the questions that were asked before a bit, obviously everything: the transportation, the hotel, breakfast each morning, lunch on days 2 and 3, dinner on nights 1 and 2. Students will also get 2 trip t-shirts that we will hand them on the day of the trip, as well as a trip sweatshirt, and we'll be asking them to wear them over the course of the trip from there. There will be a tour guide on each of our 3 buses, and there will be nighttime security in the hotel. As I said before, their job is to patrol the hallways so that our chaperones can get some sleep. And really, again, their job is not really to interact with students, but to be there if students are in need, and to contact me if there are any concerns that arise of any sort. So that's how that works. What do we want students to bring? So as I said, students are going to be given 2 t-shirts and a sweatshirt on the day of the trip. We are going to we're going to ask students to wear a particular color to the extent possible on day 1 of the trip, that when they get dressed that morning at home. And so in terms of what they need to bring from a clothing standpoint, they certainly would want to have long pants. Right now, the forecast for the 25th is up on the 2-week forecast, and we'll be looking at as it gets closer, and it's looking pretty good right now, but obviously weather patterns can change. We're guessing that the weather, if it's typical for this time of year, will be somewhere in the 50s to maybe low 60s if we get lucky, and hopefully it'll be we'll get some sunshine, and it'll be great for walking around. Sometimes students have brought a poncho, like a disposable poncho that is, fairly inexpensive, that they can carry around in a backpack or something, where if they need to put it on in a rainy situation, that can be helpful. We'll try to minimize our outside time if we can, in a situation where rain is particularly heavy. But if it's drizzling or if it's getting a little bit of intermittent rain, we will probably still be outside for the things that we would normally be outside for. We want them to have the, pajamas and comfortable shoes, especially. Can't emphasize enough. We will do somewhere between 15 and 20,000 steps on an average day down in DC. So it really is important that students have shoes that are comfortable and that they're able to walk long, for long distances in, because there was plenty of walking that we'll do, especially at this time of year. DC is incredibly busy. And it's going to be one of those things where oftentimes it's better to walk somewhere than it is to try to get the bus and get around, because of the delays that go along with being on the bus. We do, while cell phones continue to be not permitted in school, this is a very specific situation in which we want students to have their phones with them. It is another way for student safety to be maintained. And with a cell phone net needs to come a charger. As I said at the beginning of our program, we do have chargers on the bus, or outlets on the bus where students can charge their phones. And we want students to keep their phones charged, not because we want them on their phones during the trip or when we're in our venues, but it is a way to keep contact with one another on the trip, and it is very important. It's a way for them to contact you as well. So this is the situation where we would encourage cell phones. Obviously toiletries, toothbrush, toothpaste, etc. All the hotel rooms obviously are equipped in a way that a standard hotel room would be. They'll have towels, they'll have the mini bottles or whatever their means of dispensing shampoo and such is. But obviously, if students bring their own, it is they're guaranteed to have what they're comfortable with and what they would want to use. And then money, again, the only money they definitely have to have on the trip is to purchase their lunch on the way down. And then beyond that is money that they'd want to spend on souvenirs. The question that always comes up is, how much money do I think that they should bring? And my standard answer on that has always been as much as you want them to spend, because one thing I can guarantee you is that you will not get change. You could, regardless of the amount that you give them. Make sure that you're comfortable with that amount. The gift shops in the museums that we go to can get very expensive. We definitely often are able to find time for students to pick up a sweatshirt or something like that from whether it's a vendor on the street as we're walking, or from there's a gift shop that we've been able to duck into on certain occasions. I don't know if our travels are going to allow for that this year, depending on how things go, but I would say that those are the types of purchases that most students tend to like to make. Snacks for the hotel room, they're certainly welcome to have snacks. One thing I just will say in terms of packing, students should plan to pack a bag, a duffel bag or a suitcase, whichever they choose to bring, that will go under the bus, that they will not see again until we get to the hotel on day one. They can have a separate bag, like a drawstring bag or kind of small bag, a crossbody bag, whatever it may be, where they can keep their phone and charger and money for souvenirs or lunch that they can bring onto the bus, kind of like the quote unquote carry on there. That's the best way to make that work. We try not to have a lot of things being carried around with us while we're traveling into museums and so forth, just because of the amount of security that we have to go through. The more things we bring, the longer it takes to get through security. So we do try to minimize the amount that students carry with them when we're off the bus. But having snacks or having like I said, their charger. Some students like to have their earbuds, whatever it may be, on the bus is a good idea. Okay, Mr. Pernick got dropped off, so I'm just going to add him back. Give me 1 second there. Okay. Okay. And what not to bring. So very important. Please don't have students bring anything, certainly anything that's not ordinarily appropriate for school. The one exception to that is the cell phone, as I said. But things that are not things that you would bring to school, you should not bring on this trip. Electronic devices other than their cell phone, definitely not necessary and not appropriate. I mean, my favorite story is the year we had a student try to bring an Xbox with them. That's going to stay behind. That stayed in my office, and they got to pick it up after the trip. Please make sure that you leave that stuff behind. It's not necessary. It can only get lost or broken, and we don't want that to be the case. The same was true of expensive jewelry. Just we want students to only pack the things that they need to have for the trip, and leave the others at home for when they return. Okay, so medication. I want to make sure that I get into detail on this. At this point, today was the day by which our medication forms were to have been submitted to the nurse. If you've not yet done that, and a medication form requires a doctor's signature, if you've not yet done that and you need to, please do so immediately. And when I say need to, there's two different levels of need. A student who has to take medication at any point, prescription medication, obviously that's a need that is substantial in the sense that they have to have that medication, and in order for medication to be dispensed, the nurse has to have a doctor's order. Students may not carry their own medication unless they are designated to self-carry certain types of medication, and that's a process that has already been in place. They likely self-carry it during the school day now, things like an EpiPen or an inhaler. But medication that they have to be administered must be administered by our nurse, and it needs to be dropped off to Miss Napier in our health office by next Wednesday. And again, it needs to be accompanied by a doctor's order. In addition to prescription medication, though, and this is critical that everyone get this, any over-the-counter medication, and that includes things like Benadryl or Pepto-Bismol or Motrin or Tylenol, whatever it may be, for a student that has a headache or anything like that, that also must be administered by our nurse, and it can only be administered by our nurse with a doctor's order. This is actually not a rule that we have solely in Irvington. These are state guidelines. And so if you want your child to be able to take Tylenol or Advil or Pepto-Bismol if they're not feeling well, please make it a point between now and as soon as possible to get to your doctor and have them sign off on the medication and the dosage, and then have that submitted to Miss Napier in the health office. It is so important that we have that. We've had situations where students are with us on the trip, not feeling well. We have medication that we could give them, but we can't administer it because we don't have the doctor's order. The necessary paperwork hasn't been put into place. Okay, so I can't emphasize that enough. It is one form, but it is a really critical one. If you think you've submitted already and you aren't sure, please contact Miss Napier. She has a record of everyone who has submitted that documentation. Okay, we've already talked about the dietary restrictions and allergies, but that is really important for Mr. Pernick to have that information. He apologizes, by the way. He's on the call right now, but he's having some technical difficulty, so he's not able to kind of come back in to speak or have his camera working, apparently. So I'm sorry for that, but I'll just make it work our way through the last part of our program here. Okay. So with that said, regarding medication, I do want to make sure I get through the questions that are in our Q&A. So how many total meals will we have to provide money for? The answer is one, and that is lunch on Wednesday. Lunch that we will purchase on the way to DC on Wednesday at a rest stop, that needs to be with students already when they are on the trip. Every other meal will be either provided or money will be given to students by their chaperone to purchase. So it is only Wednesday's meal. Wednesday's lunch. Question about would we prefer the students to pack their belongings, suitcase or bag? And as I said before, I am ambivalent with respect to whether it's a suitcase or a bag. Obviously, the more compact, the easier it is to fit. But we do have plenty of room on our buses for luggage. But the big thing is to make sure that anything that goes in the bag or the suitcase that's going under the bus is something that students do not need until they get to the hotel that night. We will not be able to get to their materials under the bus for things like, again, an inhaler or a charger or their earbuds or money or things like that. Anything that they want to have with them on the bus for the 4.5 to 5 hour ride down, they want to put into that drawstring bag or whatever bag they're going to bring with them up top. Okay. Can they microwave in the hotel room? I believe that the rooms do have a microwave. So if they have something that they can microwave, they would be able to do that. I'd have to check that. Certainly, if you wish to, independently go to the Hyatt Bethesda's website to confirm. I think they list out what the room amenities are. I seem to remember a microwave. I can't say for certain. But that would be the answer to that. Are students allowed to carry a backpack with water, sweatshirt, etc., around with them during the day? I did mention that before, so I think some of these have probably been up for a while. Yes, they certainly should have their sweatshirt with them during the day. That's something that they can layer, take on, or put on or take off as the temperature changes. And a backpack is fine with a water bottle. Again, we try to minimize that because it does take longer to get in and out of some of the places with heavier security. And oftentimes, if we are on the bus and we're just going to one place and getting back on the bus, we'll guide students to leave those things on the bus at that point. But if they're out walking throughout the course of the day and that's what they're carrying around with them, that's certainly fine. Do I recommend Apple or Cash or Apple Pay? Apple Pay works certainly, I think, at most places at the rest stops that we stop at. And I guess I can't say for certain at like the various gift shops, although I suspect that it does. Cash is certainly fine. Cash is generally accepted. It is, obviously subject to being lost. That's the only downside there. Oftentimes a debit card, a prepaid debit card, or their own, if there's a debit card that they've been allowed to use, it is helpful. Or again, cash certainly works. And Apple Pay is definitely something that students have used in many locations that I've seen. I just can't vouch for it at every single place that they might want to purchase something. So the email address for our nurse to send the medication form, I'll say it here on our call, but it is also on our school's website. And our nurse's name is Tiara Napier. So it's TIARA.NAPIER at irvingtonschools.org. And here's Ms. Laboon adding some more detail. Thank you very much, Ms. Laboon. Medication must be in the original container with the student's name on it. Okay, so it's not, we can't make it work if a Ziploc bag is dropped off with pills in it. Please send in only the number of pills that are necessary for the trip, because as you know, we'll be on spring break after the trip. And in, the kind of hustle and bustle of our return on Friday night, it may be difficult to ensure that you get everything back that you need. If there's a specific concern about that, please do reach out to me and we'll work with you to try to make that happen. But the best way to do this is to simply take a pill bottle with the specific amount of pills that a student will need, or if you want to add one extra in case one gets dropped or something along those lines. But the specific amount of pills that they would need over the course of the trip, and send that in as the way to, or not send it and drop that off as the way to make sure that we're all set with medication. Okay. Okay. I think there might be one more. Okay. Are children able to purchase other food that is not included in the dinner menu with their own money at dinner? So I'll say yes and no. I would say that I'd ask you to envision a space that is populated with 110, 115 teenagers and another, 15, 17 adults, all trying to eat at the same time, wait staff trying to serve all of those individuals simultaneously from a set menu that's been planned in advance, and then trying to add in kind of a one-off order. It's not an ideal situation. It is certainly preferable if you could reach out to us with concerns about food, if there are any, and then we'll try to work with you to figure out what can work. If there is no other way or what have you, if there's a certain circumstance that we've got to deal with on, in the moment, then we would certainly try to do that. We've done that before, but I would say that it is definitely a preference for us to try to get all of that planned and nailed down in advance, just because of how challenging it can be to kind of make those in the moment adjustments for the staff at the restaurant. You could end up with a situation, for instance, where everyone's eating and this one special order is kind of delayed or whatever it may be, and then by the time it comes out, this one student hasn't eaten, everybody else is half done or mostly done, and it would be it's a much better situation if we can make the arrangements in advance. Do over-the-counter drugs need to be dropped off with the nurse? Good question. We'll have stock medications, for things like ibuprofen and acetaminophen. I believe Pepto-Bismol. Sarah, you can drop right back in there and tell me if I'm wrong about that. If there is a specific OTC med that you have a question about and whether that'll be carried as a stock med, you can certainly reach out to us, and I will confirm or let you know one way or the other. We try not to have 50 different families bringing in a small bottle of ibuprofen. So that's the reason for the stock med in there. If it's a very specific thing, then that may be something that would need to be dropped off. So snacks, yes, snacks are permitted in their rooms. We do, it's something that students actually get quite excited about. We do ask them to work together. If there happens to be an allergy in the room, obviously, then it's important that the students in that room, be respectful of one another and work together to make sure that there are snacks that are safe and that there's not a situation that puts somebody at risk. But outside of that, yes, snacks are permitted in the room. Students will generally have some snacks on the bus as well. It is beyond me to try to separate an eighth grader from their snacks. Will allergy meds be available for seasonal allergies? So allergy meds would be an example of something that we would need you to provide a doctor's order for, and then provide the doctor the meds themselves. And Sarah has just added. So we will carry Advil, Tylenol, and Benadryl. Any OTC meds outside of that should be sent in by parents. And if you have questions, please contact Tiara or Sarah directly. You could also copy me, and I will make sure that I will get that message to either of them to make sure we're set there. Mr. Pernick, again, dropped off, but he did get a message in there to say, with respect to the snacks, that he requested everyone bring good ones. I'll let you all judge what is a good one or not. Yeah. Okay, so I do thank all of you for great questions, for making time tonight, and more than anything, we thank you for making this trip possible. This is a great event. It is a special part of eighth grade. We're really fortunate to be able to continue to do it. It is a lot for so many folks, and really cannot wait for the trip. One last question here. Do we need to list all the OTC meds that you provide on the form? You need to list any OTC meds that you want your child to be able to take. Okay, so I think the best way to say it is, I would think not in terms of what we provide, in terms of what goes on the form. The form is there for the doctor to say what medication can be administered to the child and in what dosage. We carry certain medications because they tend to be very commonly needed or commonly approved, and to avoid the need to carry many individual pill bottles, for a convenience standpoint, we carry those stock medications with us. But in terms of what needs to go on the form, the only medications that can be administered to a child are the ones that are specifically listed on the form and in the dosage that the doctor has indicated. Okay, it is all subject to the doctor's approval. I want to make sure I emphasize that. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Again, I hope everyone has a great evening. I hope the excitement is certainly building for this trip. I know it is in our school. Look forward to seeing you next week at the DC presentation in the Mar Gym if you're able to make it. And I will certainly see you at 6:45 a.m. on Wednesday, March 25th. Thanks to Mr. Pernick. Sorry for the tech issues, but this trip doesn't happen without Mr. Pernick and his incredible efforts as the team leader. So I thank him immensely for that. Hope everybody has a great night, and we will talk very soon. Thank you.